All right. So welcome, Patreon community. I'm so excited that today, September the 21st, 2022, 9/21/22, if you're into numbers. I'm not necessarily into them, but I absolutely feel that there's just a lot of power in these numbers. It just feels really strong that on today, the 21st, that it is, there are just so many rites of passages where you're legal in some cases, yes, at 18, but in others, you have to wait till you're 21, like to drink and things like that. So 21 is a number that I like. I just absolutely like it. So I am feeling so excited about where humanity is headed. We are almost at the completion of a cycle, which means we are at the birthing of a new cycle. We are at the beginning of what is coming. We just need to walk through that door. That door is now in front of us. It's like, I always use the analogy of giving birth. We know the baby's there. We know it's got to come out. But to get that baby out is a process, and it's never a comfortable process for anybody involved. Yes, the mother is going through the pain, the dad's anxious, the doctor's concerned, make sure that it's a healthy delivery. The nurses need to be on their A game. Everything has to be seamless, and there's some screaming. I was a mom giving birth. I screamed, and I screamed some choice words. I mean, I'd never experienced that level of discomfort ever in my life, and I let it be known. And we went through a very uncomfortable process. Can you imagine? The baby had to work its way through a very narrow passageway. For it was going through the eye of the needle, if you want to call it that. And it had to get its head, its body through a space that was not designed for anything that big to move freely. So there was a stretching that took place. There was a allowing ourselves to be molded, to be moved beyond our limitations. Everybody that is involved in that birth must move beyond their limitations. This is unlike anything they've ever done, and a doctor will tell you no two births are alike. So whether it's the doctor, the doula, I can't remember the name of the other person that could possibly be there, the midwife, that's the term. We used a midwife. It doesn't matter how many births they are present to. Everyone is different because every person is different. So it doesn't matter what cycle we're completing, they're all different. And this one is no different except for one thing. Humanity has not gone through this particular cycle before. This isn't a cycle of expansion. So although we have always been at a certain level, and now we're expanding to a new level. And humanity has a chance to make a big, big leap. And that leap is only going to be experienced by those who are choosing love over fear, by those who are choosing God over the ego, who are choosing the truth of who we are. Non-physical, first and foremost. You are not your body. You must choose to trust everything that the Course in Miracles is teaching us, everything that true teachers have been teaching forever. You are not your body. You are the non-physical energy that is eternal. Those who know that are going to have a smooth process of delivery into the new earth, a very smooth transition out of the darkness. Those who are attached to the physical body being real, to material stuff, to what is of the world, to what the ego has them believe is what defines them, are going to have a very hard time. Because think about it in the birth example. If that mother wants to hold on to that baby, clamp those legs together and say, no, I'm not going to let the baby out, and use devices to keep that baby in, it's going to be very painful because that baby wants to come out. It wants to move on. So consciousness wants to expand. That is the nature of God. It's the nature of energy, expansion. To push it back is the nature of the ego, contraction. And contraction, the way that it shows up in the world is through attachments, the need to be right, the need to have your way, the need to have people behave a certain way, the need to have it look this way, to have this here and not there, to go dinner here but not there. The need to control is what the ego is all about. So if that birth mother or the doctor or whomever wants to control and keep that baby from coming out, well, there's going to be some suffering involved because that baby doesn't want to be held back. What wants to be born wants to be birthed. We have to make a decision. How much are we going to allow ourselves to flow with what is? That's a sign of one who's awake, one who understands that flowing is what allows life to be fun and easy, and the need to control, because the need to control is what creates all suffering. Because the need to control comes with separation. There's got to be me controlling something or something controlling me. Then we don't realize that we're one. We don't realize that we get to partner up and work together. There is a system that creates a need for protection and defensiveness and manipulation. That's the ego. That's the old energy that we're moving away from. It served us. It absolutely served its purpose. But what awaits for us in freedom is beyond our imagination, because our imagination has been conditioned to believe the things of separation, the things of contraction, the things of the ego. That's how fear has been developed, is by creating a mind that is so filled with the way things should look that we've lost our ability to just imagine, to allow free-flowing imagination like a child would. As a matter of fact, we've been conditioned to believe that behaving like a little child is childish, and nothing could be further than the truth. Being like a little child and flowing with what is what we must learn to do, because in order to be part of the new earth, you must be willing to flow, because we are going to something that is totally unknown. Can you imagine a controlling person going into the unknown? That's that. If you want to talk about anxiety, that would be the most anxious thing that a person who is a controller is going to experience, because to just let go and release and flow is completely against their conditioning. That is the kind of suffering that is coming to those who are not trusting God. If you don't trust that there is a beautiful plan for all that is, and it is moving us, whether we like it or not, that baby's coming, whether we like it or not, what we will do, because we are powerful beings and we have free will, is God is saying, we're all getting this choice. If you're not ready to flow and go into the unknown, that's okay. You will get another cycle in what I call cycle planet. You will be able to continue to have another process. Some people say it's 26,000 years. Some people say it's 200,000 year cycle. Whatever it is, you will have that many more incarnations, potentials for incarnations to work through the karma. And the karma is nothing more than looking at the places where you still need to learn lessons the hard way, where your idea that it has to be this way, and that's the only thing that brings you pleasure, will take you to the place where you have to see it this way too and experience the pain. And then you have this pain and you want the pleasure. For example, people who are, let's say, abusive to others, controlling of others, are going to be born to maybe a parent that's going to be very controlling of them, or a spouse, or a job, or something that's going to be very controlling of them, or be born into a government that's controlling of them, so that they can see, oh, I don't like control. Well, if you don't like being controlled, then you haven't learned your lesson if you're still controlling. If you don't like being controlled and you like freedom, you must learn to, number one, acknowledge that you are a controller. And why are you controlling? Because you don't trust. That's where honesty kicks in. I need to control because I don't trust. Those two statements are powerful. Then you can begin an honest assessment of why. Why am I not trusting God? At this point, it's not going to help us a whole lot to be focusing on the ego and the fears that it had. It really is about why am I not trusting God? There is a shift that has taken place. A line has been drawn in the sand where energetically we are being supported to open our mind and our heart into a deeper connection with God. Our work right now, and when I say, when I make this comment, I'm making this comment to those who have been on this journey for a while, what I'm going to call devoted students of truth. If you are not a devoted student of truth, you have to look at the fears. You got to still look at the ego. But if you know you have an ego, you don't have to keep going backwards. You have got to train yourself into going forward. You've got to give yourself the opportunity to acknowledge all of the things that you have trusted as it pertains to God that has moved you in the direction of greater peace. And if you know you have had those examples, then you must choose peace in order to experience it. Otherwise, the ego is going to take you into fear. So yes, the control has to do with fear, but the letting go of control has to do with peace. Which one do you want? More fear or more peace in your life? So when you keep it super simple like that, then it's about how can I trust God more? What is it that I need to release so that I can feel the experience of flowing in this trust and allowing myself to experience a joyful ride? Well, it's going to be one thing and one thing only. It's the need to be right. What is it that you need to be right about? Whatever it is that you're controlling, you need to be right for a reason. This is where we move from righteousness that is of the ego. That's why ego controls, because it needs to be right. What is it that you need to be right about? And then look at, well, what if God has another idea that's better for you? That one's actually going to be more right for you. But you're holding on to an old idea and you can't solve a problem with the mind that created it. So then we need to begin to open up our mind. God, what would you have for me? What do you want me to know? So the practice is very clear when we let go of fear and focus on our freedom to flow with God, our faith in God's way. When you make that shift to only want to know what God knows, you are absolutely altering your spiritual practice. To me, that's what I often call the second awakening. The first awakening is we're looking at our emotions. Where did our pain come from? We begin to understand the ego. We begin to change some of our thought systems. All of that begins to happen. But the second awakening is when you are committed to do only God's will. This is what solidifies our awakening. This is what really accelerates our journey. This is the process of beginning to awaken, but like a newborn baby, it's born and it's going to sleep about 24 hours or 23 hours of a 24-hour day. It's only going to wake up to typically to eat. Very little will it be awake for other things. And then a couple of days later, it'll sleep 22 hours and it'll be awake too. And then a couple of days later, it'll be awake 4 hours and sleeping only 20. And then little by little, it gets itself into a rhythm. Usually when they're sometimes after one, my grandson, it was at 1, maybe 1 and 2 months where he finally began to have a rhythm where he is sleeping now maybe about 12 hours of the day, 12 to 14 hours of the day. So he sleeps a stretch 7 at night, usually till about 6:30, 7 in the morning, not always, but somewhat, and then takes a big 2-hour nap during the day. So roughly 12 plus 2, 14 hours a day. And then he has the other 10 hours to be awake. Well, one day he will give up that nap during the day. His nighttime will shrink to about 7 to 8 hours. Then he'll be really awake. That's the same thing with us. We begin to open up our eyes that there's another way, but the ego puts us back asleep. And we little by little get to the point that we make the decision, I only want to do it God's way. Then we stay awake longer, because when you're listening to God, the journey gets more enjoyable. When you're listening to the ego, well, that's what activates anxiety and doubt and guilt and shame. I'm not doing it right. And the ego beats you up because it becomes spiritualized, and it begins to let you know what you haven't done spiritually right. But there is a process for those that are really, really committed to freedom, total freedom, no excuses, no expectations of what it's going to look like or how it's going to be, except for knowing that you're entitled to total, complete freedom. Because when you're free, totally free, is because you know that you're eternal. You know that your life is eternal. You no longer care about the experience of birth or death. You are operating, because that's of the ego, you're operating in eternal life. Let me live this one that I have fully. And then you have the freedom. And then, of course, you're going to be happy because you're going to be in alignment with who you truly are. Life, liberty, freedom. That's why those things go together. So to make the choice to follow God, you cannot continue to look at what the ego is doing to you. You've got to make a decision to live only in peace, to live only in joy, if you want freedom, you've got to free everybody else to do it their way. That's how you're going to see the controlling aspects. And that's okay. We all have to go through that process, because controlling is tied to attachments, it's tied to fears, but it all comes to the need to be right. And when we are ready to give up the need to be right, we will experience happiness. It doesn't matter who you are. So today we're going to look at lesson 48. Last week, we looked at lesson 47 that said, God is the strength in which I trust. So we spent a beautiful time looking at that, because it ends towards the very end of that one. It tells us that there is a place in you where there is perfect peace. There is a place in you where nothing is impossible. There is a place in you where the strength of God abides. But it also states at the very beginning, paragraph 1, the first sentence says, if you are trusting in your own strength, meaning in your ego, you have every reason to be apprehensive, anxious, and fearful. That's why we have to make a choice. Are we going to connect with a place in us where perfect peace abides and trust only that? Or are we going to continue to let the anxiety be real, and let the fears be real, and let the need to control be real? Because then we're just showing that we're really apprehensive and fearful of trusting God. That's all that reveals. You don't really want to give your supposed power to God. That means you do not understand how powerful God is, which means there's some fear in there about God. Because to release yourself and let yourself be carried by God is the funnest, easiest thing you could possibly do, because God really, truly wants the best for us. So there's maybe some old beliefs there about a punishing God, a wrathful God, and we've got to get to the bottom of that. Because until we come to know God as God truly is, and God is how Jesus told us God is, we've got to get to the place that we know that the creative source of all that is loving and only wants for us more than we could imagine for ourselves. Beautiful, expansive, glorious, the kingdom of heaven, the most amazing possibilities that bring us all together and allow us all to co-create in a fun and joyful way. That is what we get to have, but we got to let go of trying to control the minutia that the ego has made us think is big stuff, and it isn't. But that's how the ego keeps us stuck on the side that gets to make a choice about, am I going to reincarnate and go back through another egoic cycle? Because if you have to control, you're controlling your destiny by choosing to come back into an egoic 3D world. Perfectly okay. But if you're choosing to be part of New Earth, you've got to trust God and go to something that you don't know anything about, because that's not the life of freedom you've been living. So, lesson 48, there is nothing to fear. Until you trust that statement that there is nothing to fear, you're not free. You cannot have freedom while you think that there are things that are deserve to be considered as valid reasons for fear. You haven't come deep enough into the truth of who you are, the creator of this reality, one with God, who has manifested this experience just to experience it, to truly be in the experience of, of this beautiful planet. Because we haven't been operating with that knowing, egos have been created, have been indoctrinated into believing all kinds of things that make fear seem real because we see things that are fearful out there. Well, you haven't come deep enough into where you realize that you have projected that so that you could experience the fear and take your power from it. That's what karma is about. You see the fear and you choose to say no to it. But if you don't say no to the fear, then you've got to experience the opposite of it. You've got to experience the being fearful and the being the one that causes fear to others. Then you're stuck in that karmic cycle where you're just bouncing lifetime after lifetime, being afraid of sexual abuse, and then being the one who is the sexual abuser, and back and forth you go, lifetime after lifetime, until you decide, you know what, I'm not going to be afraid that I was sexually abused. I am not going to live in fear. I'm not a victim. I'm a child of God. I'm a powerful being. I'm going to forgive that person because I'm ending the cycle of karma. Then your fear drops. Now, why are you afraid of somebody doing that to you? When you call to yourself the truth of your powerfulness, and then you make a decision, God, I am going to follow the path of fun and ease. On that path are no rapists. There are no abusers on that path. That's too high of a consciousness. That's too high of a frequency for anybody that's operating a low frequency. If you are having an experience of dense frequency, you came to learn a lesson. And this is one of the most important things about this spiritual journey. This is where people in their spiritualized ego get stuck. We get stuck in wanting all of the beautiful, wonderful things that we're promised about the new earth and promised about following God, love, joy, and peace. And maybe don't even call it God, just call it universe. And you just want to be one with all that is, but you don't want to look at the darkness because that's beneath me. If the darkness is beneath you in your mind, you're not free from it. You are in spiritual bypass, denying that that is there, because we have to look at that thing that we call darkness, at that thing that we don't like. We've got to have the power of God inside of us to look at it and forgive it and release it. It's our forgiveness that releases it. But here's the forgiveness that release. I forgive myself because I forgot I was supposed to bring love to that. And I didn't bring love to it. So I created a victim story or a bully story, and I got stuck in that karma. In essence, it is not real. It's an experience that happened to show me, did I bring God with me in terms of remembering the truth of who I am? Or did I let my mind be conditioned by egoic beliefs that had me think that had power over me? This is the bifurcation. We have to make a decision. If you are powerful, you have to use your power to choose only God, to choose only love. If you are powerful, you must face the fear and say, yes, that's part of the journey. I used my power to believe in fear. Now fear is not real for me because I know that I am the creator of this reality. I created it to learn lessons from it. Now I've created this reality to learn lessons from love, which is going to be a joyful, fun experience. I had to learn lessons from fear. It had to be condensed. It had to be dark. It had to be secret. That's the 3D world. We are now, all of us are in the 4D world where we get to see which one do we prefer. And if you're picking fear, okay, another cycle there. But if you are picking love, You are going to go into the realms of co-creation where you're going to see people working together in collaboration, trusting, transparent, joyful, honest. If you want to be together, you're together. If you're not, you're not. There's no attachment. Nobody belongs to anybody. Everybody is free. From that place, there is an absolute do what feels good, and everybody's going to be taken care of because God's in charge, not humans. Here, humans gave power to the ego. So we've made all these idols that have kept us in bondage, and we didn't even know it. We thought we were free. This kind of freedom, this is total freedom, absolute, complete, total freedom. And only that kind of freedom can be aligned with peace. This kind of freedom that we think we have here, you know, what grocery store we get to go to, what restaurant do we, that's not real freedom, because there's a lot of suffering if your restaurant's closed. There's a lot of suffering, no peace, if the grocery store doesn't have your favorite cereal. I know it. I've seen my children have a meltdown because the grocery store didn't have their favorite whatever. So, and to be honest, I've had my meltdowns too. Had to go talk to the manager. Why is this not here? Well, I thought I was free, but I was not experiencing peace. This is a total freedom. No attachments. Everybody gets to do what they want to do. But to have this freedom, you can't have this fear. These are opposite frequencies and they don't go together. So let's read this, paragraph 1. The idea for today simply states a fact. There is nothing to fear. If you don't believe that that's a fact, you're still in this frequency. If you're in the process of saying, you know what, I want that to be my reality, then you're in what I call the bridge between this frequency and this frequency. You're on the bridge and you are somewhere on there. You need to make a decision that to continue to move on that bridge so you can have total freedom, you must cultivate trust in God. Because until you trust God, the ego is going to feed you fears and you're going to believe the ego because you have thought that you are your ego. But when you start listening to your soul, you've got to start cultivating a relationship knowing that you are the Father, because you and the Father, Mother, God are one. All right. So lesson 48, there is nothing to fear. Sentence number 1, the idea for today simply states a fact. It is not a fact to those who believe in illusions, but illusions are not facts. All of these things that have happened that the ego has contributed to our making them are not facts. They are experiences in consciousness that once we have the death experience, all that disappears. Even what the ego builds, the structures that the ego builds, everything is temporary. They decay. But the earth that God created, that's not going anywhere. We might have been polluting it, but the earth is cleaning itself up. So what God creates is permanent. What the ego creates is temporary. So pay attention. Are you basing your reality? This is what happened to me. This is what so-and-so did to me. This is why I'm this way. And calling that a fact when it's an illusion, it's an illusion because the minute you change your mind about it, it's not your reality anymore. That's how you can tell an illusion is that which you don't believe anymore disappears. It's not part of your experience. Then you're aligning with the fact of who you are, powerful creator, creating your life experience. Then it goes on to say in sentence number 3, paragraph 1, in truth, there is nothing to fear. It is very easy to recognize this, but it is very difficult to recognize it for those who want illusions to be true. If you want to be righteous about what you believe, you will point at the illusion. But look at what the government did to me. Look at what those pedophiles did. Look at what that medical establishment did. They are terrible. They are bad. Look at what they did to me. Look at how they're hurting people. Because we're making the illusion a fact. But when you can look at it and go, my goodness, I forgive all these people. They don't know what I know. I've got to forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. They know not that they have a choice for God because their ego has them believing that is the only truth. It's not so we can say we're going to deny that those things are happening. That would be delusional. but it's to say it has no power over me. We are denying that the ego has power over us. That is how you ground yourself in knowing you and God are one. God, how do you want me to look at this? These are my brothers and sisters, all coming from the same energy. All of us come from non-physical. All of us have free will to choose to do whatever we want to do on this planet. And all of us who came to the 3D planet came to choose to go through lifetime after lifetime to experience karma to get lessons. Well, some are on this side of the lesson, the positive pleasure side of the lesson. Some are on this side of the lesson, the mean, the vindictive, the bully side of the lesson. They're working out karma, and they're doing what they're doing to help everybody wake up. So you see it for what it is. From neutrality, everybody's playing a role, because it's kind of like a movie. We are the directors of it. We came in to play the game this way. Now we're choosing to play the game this way. And it's perfectly okay. You don't have to judge yourself or others for playing that game. Just don't play that game anymore. Do you remember when you were little and maybe you were outside playing hide and seek? And at some point you got tired of it and you just said, okay, I'm going to go. Did you sit there and say, you people are playing the wrong game? We should be ashamed of ourselves for playing the wrong game, a bad game. No, you got tired of it and you went, played something else. Many, many times. I remember many times I grew up with 3 sisters, 4 little girls. We played together all the time. And boy, did we shift from one game to the next to the next. 4 of us might have been playing here, maybe in the pool. And then 1 went to the trampoline. Guess what happened? 2 went to the trampoline. Now 3 went to the trampoline, and the 4th one followed to the trampoline. Got tired of the trampoline. We wanted to go swinging. 1 went to the swing. Then 2 went to the swing. Nobody was saying the pool was bad, the trampoline was bad, but the swing was best. We just flowed from one game to the next. That's what's happening here. Those who are awake are just flowing. This game is complete. Now we're moving to the next game. So why judge this experience when it's an experience that gives people opportunities to choose God over ego? It's serving a purpose. But once you choose God, you don't need ego. It served its purpose. So here it's just telling us it is very easy to recognize that there's nothing to fear, but it is very difficult to recognize it for those who want that illusion to be real. Make the ego real, the attachments, the money, the house, the looks, the whatever. If you want that to be real, you're going to suffer. Paragraph number 2. Today's practice period will be very short, very simple, and very frequent. Merely repeat the idea as often as possible. There is nothing to fear. Walk around all day long saying there is nothing to fear. You can use it with your eyes open at any time and in any situation. It is strongly recommended, however, that you take a minute or so whenever possible to close your eyes and repeat the idea slowly to yourself several times. There is nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. If your mind is still operating more on the egoic side, it's going to start talking. Oh, yes, there is something to fear. This is spiritual mumbo jumbo. There is nothing to fear. We have to be afraid. We don't have money for the rent next month. We have to be afraid. We need new tires and don't have the money. We need to be afraid because they just hired somebody new at the office and boss seems to like that person over you. You might get fired. There's reason to fear. Oh, my partner started looking at somebody else, talking nice to somebody else. I should be afraid. What do you mean there's nothing to fear? Then the ego is going to give you a whole laundry list of all of the beliefs that keep you here, creating karma. So you're going to need to get fired so that you stop fearing getting fired. You're going to need to have your partner leave you so you can see that you need to give up fearing being left alone. All those things create karma. The fear creates the karma that gives you the opportunity to have the lesson to forget, the lesson to recognize you forgot that you are a child of God, that you forgot that you're the creator of your reality. That's what the karma helps us with. All right. It is particularly important that you use the idea immediately should anything disturb your peace of mind. Oh, I'm afraid of the weather. Oh, wait a second. There's nothing to fear. I can get through any weather. And if the weather is severe and I perish, I am eternal. So I'm not going to be afraid of death. Then let me go through the experience. Oh, they're calling for severe winds and severe rain. Well, do I need to board up the windows? What do I do? Can I enjoy the experience? Oh, wow, I've got a physical body and I get to put things up on the window. Maybe I need some help. Can I call my neighbors? Can I gather people together and let's do this together? Let's all help each other. Usually during disasters, people are helpful to each other. Can you experience that in recognition that it's a co-creation? We're coming together to help one another. If you can do that, you are freeing yourself from the karmic need to repeat the lesson. That's one of the most important things that people just don't understand. Holding on to fear keeps us stuck in the wheel of karma. Until we trust God, we cannot move to the next level, which is when you trust God, there is only love. So fear cannot possibly enter the equation. That's what the mind has to get wrapped around. All right, so paragraph number 3, final paragraph. The presence of fear is a sure sign that you are trusting in your own strength. The awareness that there is nothing to fear shows that somewhere in your mind, though not necessarily in a place that you recognize as yet, you have remembered God and let his strength take the place of your weakness. Once you begin to practice with certainty, not being afraid of certain things, you're listening to the voice of the Holy Spirit. You're listening to intuition. That's God talking to you, God guiding you. We just then need to be consistent instead of going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, which makes us spiritually bipolar. And we all go through that process. We move down the bridge enough that we get solidly grounded in the truth of who we are. Here, we know we are committed to the truth that is true always. And then we practice being entitled to that miracle. We practice knowing with certainty, I'm expecting that to happen. And I want this thing, it's going to show up in my experience. But the wanting that we want must be from a place of love that serves the greater good of all. You cannot trust God if you have selfish pursuits. It's just not possible. It has to be for the greater good of all. If you want your child to graduate from college because you want them to have an experience of that graduation and take that diploma, take that career and be successful. And let's say they want to be a doctor and you want them to be the best healer in the world in service to the greater good of all. That is seeing what's happening in the world, like somebody getting, education, whatever, from God's perspective. If you're looking at it from the ego, I can't wait for him to graduate and get that degree and make a ton of money, or for her to make a ton of money and build herself a name and be recognized and make all kinds of money. Well, that's all about me. This is all about we. And we've got to train ourselves to know that when we are thinking with God is always for the greater good of all, because you recognize our oneness. Non-physical oneness becomes absolutely obvious, having an experience in physicality. So you're no longer invested in what this looks like from a perspective of, oh, I want people to look at me and think that I'm beautiful and fabulous. I want to look like that model, or I want to be that model. Here, you take care of your physical vessel because you want it to last you as long as possible in a healthy way, so you can be bringing more love to the planet. You want to share and extend more goodness. All right, so the last sentence says, the instant you are willing to do this, there is indeed nothing to fear. Let me read the sentence before so you know what we're talking about here. The awareness that there is nothing to fear shows that somewhere in your mind, though not necessarily in a place that you recognize as yet, you have remembered God and let his strength take the place of your weakness. You choose love over fear. You choose God over ego. The instant you are willing to do that, to make the choice, there is indeed nothing to fear. And that's what the Course in Miracles is helping us train our mind to shift our perception from ego to God. That's a miracle. To change your mind about what you used to think was right to God's way of doing things is the miracle. That is what our mind has been trained to do through these teachings, is to learn to release our righteousness by little helping us cultivate trust in God. Little by little helping us cultivate trust in peace feels better than righteousness. Freedom feels better than safety. That being on the side of God in the unknown feels so much more expansive, and it's so much more exciting than in the known trying to control it. Amazing, amazing opportunities for all of us who are willing to recognize that there is nothing to fear. That opportunity that is ahead for us is currently being experienced by many of us on the planet. And we are finding each other. We are co-creating, fearless people coming together, people who've detached from what the world thinks about them and are speaking freely for the greater good of all. We're watching that right now. The medical world is bifurcating. There's the old medical ways, and then there's the new healing ways. They're not so new. They're really old ways, because that which is of God is eternal. So they've always been there, but it's becoming more clear that it is the right way for us to operate. Not as in right, because that one's wrong, but this is the way of God. And we're coming together. They're coming together. That's not the world that I'm in the medical healing of the physical body. I'm in the healing of the mental, emotional body. So you know what? I'll put myself in that group. We're all working together to support anybody who wants to cross the bridge. There's new education systems that honor the child is a child of God, that the child comes in whole, perfect, and complete. The old education system is about indoctrination. The new education system is about let the child lead the way. Absolutely very different. Let the child take us, because the kids are closer to God. They have a direct connection. They're hearing intuitively what's the next game to do, what's the next thing that's going to be fun. We let them lead, there will be no bored teachers ever again. If we let the children lead the way, the teachers are bored because they spend so much time having rules and getting mad that the kids are not following the rules. That's draining and exhausting to try and get a classroom of 32 kids to stay quiet at the same time, to eat food at the same time, to take a nap at the same time, turn their homework in at the same time. Those teachers are exhausted because they're trying to control that which God created free. Amazing, huh? But those systems are happening. The governance systems, self-governing, where you serve all your brothers and sisters for the greater good of all, those systems, they're being put in place. We have people who are leading, really, truly leading for the greater good of all, while we have leaders who are all about me, and I don't care about you, creating all kinds of nonsensical rules and laws and regulations, trying to control people and lying about what they're saying, because the ego is all about hush hush. I can't let them see what I'm planning, because it's going to hurt them. So I can't let them see that. It benefits me. That's where secrets come in. Transparency. Everybody knows what's going on. We all see, okay, what's happening here. Everybody gets a say. Well, that's because in connection with your higher self, with God, with the soul in you, there are no secrets. All minds are joined. It's all for the greater good. You want everybody to know so that everybody can participate, because we're all moving together in expansion. Serves everybody. The days of haves and have-nots is going to be going away, because when you're equal, you are equal. Doesn't mean everybody's going to make the same amount of money, but nobody's going to hold on to more than they need. It's going to be absolutely beautiful. We're going to be helping one another the way it was designed to be. But to help each other, we cannot have fear. We cannot have hierarchies. We cannot have controllers and bullies. We can't do that. And we can't have victims. You cannot think that you're a victim of anything. You have to know that you're the creator of your reality. If you don't like this reality, move on to this one. Cross that bridge and make a decision to listen to only for the voice for God. It's really, truly that simple. Not easy, because it takes a lot of choices to get to that. Everything that we believe has to be looked at from a different perspective. And then you shift and you have a miracle. Ooh, relief. And you release and you release and you release from the old and you move into the new. That's the process. There's no other way. So I hope this perspective, this transmission of what this lesson is about makes a difference for you. I hope you can hear the truth in such a simple lesson, 3 short little paragraphs, half a page, lesson 48. And that you find some peace in that you find some strength in that you find some, some courage to make the decision to face what the ego wants you to think is true, and it's not. It's fake, it's made up, and it will dissolve the minute you stop giving it power and choose for what is true, and is true always and eternally. Well, if you want to mute yourself and share anything, great. If you don't, it's perfectly okay. We will be here next week on our Wednesday Ascension with A Course in Miracles Patreon transmission. There you are, Miss Cat.
Hi. Well, my share would be, wow, it was very, it seems like it's always very appropriate, the lessons. Of course, every lesson has that truth in it. So of course it feels right. So I thank you. Thank you very much. And I appreciate you, and I appreciate your sharing this truth. I really, really do.
Thank you so much, sweetie. Well, you and I will connect separately. So just text me when you've got time.
Okay, darling. Won't be today, but yeah.
No worries.
All right. Thanks,
Bye-bye,
sweetie.
love.
Bye.